Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to call this special meeting of the MPO Policy Committee to order. Reminder that the meeting is being live streamed. Members, in order for online attendees to hear, please make sure you unmute your microphone, identify yourself when you're making or sending a motion so that the secretary can capture who is making the motion, which I did not identify myself. I'm Gia Biaggi, Acting Secretary of the Illinois Department of Transportation. For those attending in person, please complete the sign-in sheet located in the hallway before you leave. If you wish to make a public comment, please fill out the public comment card and return to a staff member. We always have time for that. For those who are participating via Zoom, please keep your microphone on mute unless you're called upon to speak. And when appropriate on the agenda, we will request comments from those online. And you can indicate your desire to speak via the chat box. So staff is monitoring the Zoom and will recognize you when it is time to speak. So with that, Amy, could you please call the roll?
Yes, I will call the agency by name. For the member present, please identify yourself by name for the record. IDOT.
Here, Gia Biaggi.
Chicago DOT.
Present, Mary Nickel.
CMAP Frank Beal. CMAP Matt Brawley. Class 1 Railroads.
Tom Evenson, Union Pacific.
Cook County.
Present, Tara Orban.
Council of Mayors.
Present, Leon Rockingham.
CTA.
Present, Molly Poppy for CTA.
DuPage County.
Present, John Loper.
FHWA.
Present, Todd Schmidt.
FTA.
Present, Mark Kane.
Tollway.
Present, Karen Robles.
Kane County.
Present, Tom Rickert.
Kendall County. Lake County.
Present, Kevin Carrier.
McHenry County.
Present, Scott Hennings.
Metra.
Present, David Kralik.
Pace.
Present, Eric Llewellyn.
RTA.
Present, Kyle Whitehead for Leanne Redden.
Will County.
Present, Christina Kapkowski for Jennifer Tortino.
Thank you.
All right, looks like we have a quorum. Any requests received for comment? All right, hearing none. Can I get to participate remotely in this meeting in compliance with the Open Meetings Act, it requires a majority vote of this body. Can I get a motion to approve virtual participation?
I actually don't think we have any requests for virtual.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, no need. Okay. All right. Let the secretary please mark the members present, and there are none to participate in matters of the committee. All right. Item number 2, agenda changes and announcements. There are no changes to the agenda. Let's see. And now we're on to items for approval. Item 3.01, the FTA sub-area allocation, et cetera. We have Russell Pietroviak. Hopefully I got that right.
Yep.
Senior Programming Analyst who will walk us through the item.
Okay. As stated in the memo included in your packet, on May 5th, the full FTA apportionments were released by FTA. Included in your packet then are the FFY 2025 FTA suballocations between Indiana and Illinois and Wisconsin and Illinois. For FTA funding, section 5307/5340, section 5337, section 5339, and section 5310. Typically, the Transportation Committee, which took action this morning, and the MPO would be asked to take action on the suballocations after the RTA board had approved them. However, due to the timing of the release of the apportionments, the Transportation Committee, which again took action this morning, and the MPO is being asked to take action prior to the RTA board meeting, which is why what we're asking for is the MPO Policy Committee endorsement of the suballocations contingent on the RTA board approval on June 12th is what is being requested. So after the motion is made, if there are any questions, I can answer them at that time.
So can I get a motion to approve fiscal year 2025 FTA sub-area allocations contingent upon RTA's approval at its June 12th, 2025 board meeting.
Motion, Lake County.
Second?
Second from Jeff Shelkey.
Okay. Oh, there is someone online. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you. All right. Now, are there any questions or discussion? No? Okay. All right, thank you, everyone. Okay. So next, we have item 3.02. Lindsay Bailey will present the Safe Streets for All Regional Safety Action Plan for the MPO's consideration.
All right. Thank you so much for being here today and for coming for this special meeting. Let's see, we can move on to the next slide. I want to give a special note of appreciation for our county partners that have worked with us through this process, as well as the consultants, but we look forward to continuing the work when we convene that regional safety group. But let's go on to the next slide. So I'm going to start with that quick reminder of why we are here talking about safety. Then I'm going to go into some highlights of all the county plans, including Lake County, which I missed in the last presentation. And then we'll talk about this approval and what will come next, and have some questions if you need. So even before our region reached its peak of 701 fatalities, the Transportation Committee had already been asking CMAP to take an important role in traffic safety. And the safety action plans that I'm presenting today are the result of many different efforts coming together, stakeholders working across jurisdictions, conversations with residents, and countless hours of data analysis. And these plans are based on the safe system approach. When we can accept the drivers are going to make mistakes, we can anticipate some of those mistakes. Using a redundancy of safety measures to anticipate that human behavior, we can create an environment where a mistake won't result in a death or a serious injury. We're still going to have crashes, but more of our residents will be able to walk away from those crashes. Okay, to the more exciting part of the highlights. So I mentioned before, each of these county plans followed our regional framework for developing a safety action plan. It meets the federal requirements for a qualifying safety action plan, but they were put together by different teams and they have different highlights that we want to and takeaways that we want to share with you today. And again, they represent all of the roads in the counties. They are not just the responsibility of our county partners. They include all the local municipalities, IDOT, and we'll need to have a really collaborative process to implement these changes and these recommendations and make some progress on safety. So for Cook County, some of the highlights we pulled were that between 2018 and 2022, traffic fatalities increased by more than 50%. And while people outside of cars make up only 3% of total crashes, they are a quarter of our fatal and serious injury crashes. Turning and angle crashes are most frequent for being responsible for those fatal and serious injury crashes, and aggressive driving was a primary cause in 60% or almost 60% of fatalities and serious injuries. Next slide. We have a high injury network map that is available in web form that we will be able to share. And this is where the assessment of the frequency and the rate of serious and fatal crashes, injury crashes occurred on roadways. Most commonly, the blue layer below it is the areas of persistent poverty. Can you go to the next slide? These roadways highlighted in sort of a rainbow color scheme are just 5% of the overall system, and they account for 35% of our serious injuries and fatalities. Next slide. DuPage has their even higher percentage of aggressive driving being the resulting in serious injury, crashes, or fatalities at 71%. At least one of these emphasis areas were identified in 85% of fatal and serious injury crashes in DuPage: speeding, intersections, older drivers, and people walking and biking. We found that while arterial streets only make up 13% of the street miles in the county, they account for 58% of severe crashes. Next. This map shows the DuPage County High Injury Network. So this is where we're seeing the most fatal and severe crashes. And we found it interesting that their top 10 corridors did not include any highways because the serious crash rate per mile was not as high as some of these arterial streets that we have. There are significant portions of Illinois 83 as well as Illinois 56 and 38. Next slide. For Kane County, the top 3 emphasis areas were intersection, speeding, roadway departure, which was the roadway departure being much more common in unincorporated areas where, as compared to municipalities, where you see more of the intersection crashes. And again, the roadways with the highest relative risk were those arterials with 4 or more lanes. In Kane County, it was the speed limit of 30 or less, and for all roads with more than, or from 2,000 to 20,000 and more than 20,000 average vehicles per day. Next. The high injury network in Kane County, representing 10.4% of the roadway network, accounts for 77.8% of all fatal and serious injury crashes. The lines that are shown in red have 11 or more fatal or serious injury crashes per mile, and the roads shown in this network have at least 5 of those crashes. Next slide. Lake County. The top emphasis areas for fatal and serious injury crashes in Lake County were intersection, speeding, roadway departure, and impaired driving. The crashes that were overrepresented in fatal and serious injury outcomes were fixed object, pedestrian, and head-on crashes. And again, arterials standing out with the largest share of fatal and serious injury crashes, especially those with 4 or more lanes, speed limit of 45 or more, and more than 2,500 average vehicles per day. And we also have a map of the high injury network. And in Lake County, they did an assessment of the high injury network and then focused in on what they're calling the very high injury network. So, oops, I'm missing a V in my second bullet, but the very high network is only 2.4% of the roads, and that has 35% of fatal and serious injury crashes. And the overall high injury network is 7.5% of the road network, accounting for 66% of those fatal and serious injury crashes. And you can see it, a lot of it is up in Waukegan, and as mentioned earlier in the presentation. Next. For McHenry County, they looked at those crashes types that were overrepresented in fatal and serious injury crashes, having more than double their share of total crashes, which were pedestrian, motorcycle, impaired driving, bicyclists, wrong way, unrestrained, and roadway departure. So as an example of what we mean by that, by overrepresented, impaired driving crashes are only 5% of total crashes, but they account for 25% of the fatal and serious injury crashes. The top 3 emphasis areas were speeding, intersection, and roadway departure, as we see in a lot of the counties. And McHenry County adopted a Vision Zero resolution 10 days ago. Next. This is McHenry's high injury network, and they found that the major collector roads have the highest fatal serious injury crash rate per vehicle miles traveled, while interstates have the lowest, and principal arterials have the highest crash rate per mile of roadway. Next. And for Will County, They noted that roads with speed limits above 35 miles per hour are only 20% of the network, but they account for 43% of fatal and serious injury crashes. They also found that crashes occurred more frequently on roads in areas of persistent poverty. They were overrepresented in fatal and serious injury crashes. And Will County adopted their Vision Zero resolution on May 15th. This is their high injury network, again, alluding to what John mentioned before of some of our older communities having a higher representation of the high injury network, being Joliet at the center of the map there. And this network is 6.3% of the county's roadways, which account for over 68% of fatal and serious injury crashes. So severe crashes are 11 times more likely to occur on these roadways. So after adoption of these safety action plans, CMAP has a lot of work lined up to continue the safety work. We will be responsible for convening the regional traffic safety group and to monitor progress on all of these plans. We have developed a new program area that will be headed up by Victoria Barrett called the Safe Systems Program Area that will look at what are some of these broader policy angles we can take, what are some of the things that we can implement from the different safety action plans to see progress on our safety outcomes and achieve our 2050 goal of 0 fatalities. We also have many components that were in our original scope for these safety action plans, but due to our accelerated timeline and schedule, we didn't have a chance to get to them, but we still are committed to doing more safety work. Okay, next slide. These plans were wrapped up last Friday and shared through the agenda and were presented to the Transportation Committee this morning and recommended for approval to this committee. So today we're here to ask you to adopt them. And these plans, once adopted, will enable counties and municipalities within these study areas to have a qualifying safety action plan in time for this year's 2025 SS4A NOFO, which would allow them to apply for implementation funding to implement some of the recommendations in these plans.
All right. Thank you so much. It's really, really interesting and important work. Can I get a motion to approve Safe Streets for All Regional Safety Action Plans?
Motion to approve RTA.
RTA,
Cook County seconds.
any second? All approved? Oh, sorry, all. Oh, sorry, you're right, out of order. Is there any discussion? If I could add a point, so one, this is excellent work, and it's something that at IDOT, we look at, the 3 legs of the stool, right? There's what we can do about design, which is a big part of that leg, how we design our streets, what we can do on the enforcement side. But one of the tools that was mentioned in here is sort of how we set speed limits. And, we know that there's an effect on people's driving behavior when we lower speed limits. There's an important halo effect. We've seen it in other cities. So I wanted to take this opportunity today to announce that IDOT has changed its policy in the way that we will set speed limits in urban areas. It's a good step forward, but not the last step. But thanks to our Zero Fatalities Task Force that's helped us think through these issues, we have followed what many state DOTs have followed, which is beginning to start a speed limit at the 85th percentile, which is, pick your fastest driver from the fastest to the 15th fastest. And that's where the analysis would begin in terms of lowering the speed limit. It's been a standard that has been used for many, many years. I think we're going on a decade plus. And so the change that we're making is we're going to start at the 50th percentile where we begin our analysis. So that hopefully is a much better foundation to start with. We are also going to take in consideration things like use of bikes and pedestrians and start to quantify that set of modalities and experiences on the roadway to be really important factors in enabling localities to set the speed limits that are right for them. As we saw on this, it's the non-highway arterials. Many often are state routes. We know this. We know that's where fatalities and crashes are occurring, and we want to make sure we are a supporting partner in helping municipalities to start where you need to. So it's a work in progress, but this is I think, a big moment for our DOT and changing the way that where we start, because where you start has less to do with where you finish. So I do want to thank folks who participated on the Zero Fatalities Task Force. And I think in particular, Vicki Barnett from CMAP has been very helpful to us on this. And so we hope that, again, we can be a helpful part of what you all need to do in your municipalities and counties to get it right and make sure you have the tools that you need. So I just wanted to share that with the group, and I was looking for a good moment to talk about it, and here we are. So thank you. Yes. RTA.
That is awesome news, Secretary. Good to hear. Thank you so much for that. I said this earlier at Transportation Committee, but I know the group is not totally the same here. On the design side, to your point about arterial streets being a big challenge in our region, as this report demonstrates, there was discussion at the Transportation Committee about how all of us can work together to try to pursue safety improvements and traffic calming on those arterials where a disproportionate number of crashes are happening. And one I know challenge at attacking those streets is IDOT generally has a set schedule for resurfacing and reconstructing streets like that, right? So to what extent does that schedule overlap with the priorities that are identified in these plans? Because we don't necessarily want to wait for that street to come up before we can make a infrastructure change that could prevent crash and save lives, right? So I hope the Transportation Committee and this committee and others can try to talk about how we can integrate what was identified in these plans with the resurfacing and reconstruction schedule for those arterial streets, and try to attack those really methodically, because I feel like that's what's necessary for us to get the numbers down and eventually get them to zero, which is where we want to be.
Great. Thank you. Kevin.
Yeah, just a quick comment, I think, and maybe, I don't know if you have anything at this point, Lindsay, or not to respond to, but just a comment. One thing we didn't talk about at TC was like the funding source for these two. So like prioritization, like Kyle mentioned, is one thing, and then how are we going to fund a lot of these, especially from municipalities and stuff. So I know there's the SS4A bucket, and IDOT's got the HISAP program, and we got our council mayors funding and stuff like that. But I guess one thought is, is taking these projects that are in this plan and trying to, maybe prioritize them or give them additional points or something like that, and like ranking project selection and stuff like that. I know we have committees to talk about that, but just kind of a thought is, now we have this plan, can we take like high entry network projects and stuff and give them some extra merit or weight or something like that, just for consideration of funding? So
Yeah, I think it's a great point. So we just awarded almost 140 million worth of ITEP projects across the state, 66 communities. You may have seen some of these, you may have received some of these. And in addition, there's another 400 million available for local roads projects. The deadline is June 1st. It should be out there, and we've had a lot of help getting the word out, but it should be a fairly simple application process. And we are explicit that we are looking for complete streets projects. We are looking for both shovel ready and helping communities to get shovel ready as part of that. It's my hope that we can continue to have these kinds of opportunities, but you're right. And I think combining your 2 points, right? How can we all be strategic, line it up, and then if, we'll try to make sure that we've got funding available with enough notice. We did let folks know in April that this was coming, but that we can make sure that you all can be strategic where you need to and that it's lining up properly. So yeah, thanks for that. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, just a few points. I first want to say thank you for the CMAP staff and the consultants that have been working on this fairly diligently, and a lot of work took place in recent months, and we appreciate those efforts. This has been an important issue for, well, sounds like IDOT and many of the agencies. The counties a number of years ago made the first initial efforts to make sure that this became a priority, and it did, and we appreciate that. We appreciate that we were able to receive the federal funds to initiate this effort. I also appreciate that this is the beginning. I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to occur. Kevin's correct. There's funding issues. Even if you look at the reconstruction of all these roads, a lot of this could take 100 years. I mean, we live with, and this was mentioned, we live with a lot of older infrastructure that we can barely even maintain right now. So a lot of this will be subject to funding. And so to take this step forward, to continue to look at, are there means, countermeasures, metrics that we can utilize to really focus where those efforts need to be. I think it's also, I know in Kane County, we started a traffic operations safety group a few years ago when we all started looking at the safety issue. We need to make it a priority. We meet on a regular basis. It sounds like on a regional level, we're going to be starting that as well. And I think all these efforts are important. It's good that IDOT's looking at, because most of the counties we utilize IDOT speed study requirements. IDOT essentially has to sign off on our speed studies the way we do them in order to facilitate. So it's very good that that's all occurring and that we're having some opportunities to look at things a little bit different. You know, at the same time, we also have to be understanding too. I know the last two fatalities in my county were individuals of age. And it's a little bit difficult to address some of this. And I think that technology will be assisting us with a lot of that as well. But all around, this is an excellent starting point. Glad that we've gotten to this point, and we'll continue to be working with CMAP and with our consultant to do further things over the next 6 months. And we just appreciate all the efforts. This is a very important topic. So thank you.
Yeah. Are there other comments or questions or discussion? Okay, now I can do a motion. Done motion. I did the motion. Jeez. All in favor? Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so now if there are, again, any public comments from folks in the audience, this would be the time. And I assume no one else has joined us remotely and requested to make a comment.
Yes,
Public-
this is
Okay,
from John Paul Jones from Grover and Wood.
yeah, please
I
go ahead.
appreciate, and yes, thank you so much. We appreciate again the report from the Transportation Committee, and the consulting report's going to be very much used on the soft side. The report gives us a really good glimpse of what we're dealing with. Also, I think we mentioned in an earlier meeting about the heavy vehicles, particularly when it comes to the electrical vehicles. I think the report may need to talk about that a little bit, maybe some kind of disclosure. But I know Lindsay made a statement that it was that people may walk away from, but as the vehicles get heavy, we may have more impacts than we recognize. And not sure what region that may be, but the heavy vehicles may be more impactful than we know. The second thing is technology. We mentioned it earlier, but I'm reminded again that I recall the state made some issues with the Chicago region about our crosswalk technology, that particularly for our complete street locations, they wasn't, I think the technology shifted and the crosswalks were not in full compliance. And I think we're going to keep that in mind as well. I know we sent a letter to CDOT asking them to take a second look at our crosswalk technology. But again, I'm not sure what the status is on that. Other thing about safety, there is a lot of discussions in City Hall about the underground work that's being scheduled both for People's Gas and with the Water Department, and that there's a great deal needed for coordination because there's going to be a lot of revisiting of infrastructure. beyond what was previously done last year. And so a lot of, again, the state is asking these agencies to take a second look at a lot of locations throughout the state. I know for the water department, they had to take a second look at least 1,200 locations that they had to prioritize over the next 2 or 3 years. And so that will impact the safety as well. And we may want to kind of work together to kind of get from CDOT and from the water department and from People's Gas what's going on, so we can anticipate ways to better communicate safe traffic routes and safe and communication that relates to those key corridors. I just want to share that because I think we may need much more one-on-ones with departments about what can we expect on some of these roads with all these shifts that the city and the state is now talking about. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate this moment.
Thank you so much for the comments. Are there any other folks online wishing to make comment? No? Okay. I think we're on item 5, which is our next meeting, which is scheduled for June 12th, 2025.
Hello?
Oh, we do have someone.
It's Garland. It's Garland Armstrong, formerly of Des Plaines in Elmwood Park, Illinois, now living in
Okay.
Des Moines, Iowa. How you doing?
We're good. We're good. Would you like to make a comment?
Yeah.
Okay.
As I was saying, I brought up in the Transportation Committee meeting about the sidewalks thing, and I want to make sure that y'all have the data of it, or make sure you have the data to make sure what are the percentage of those have like the sidewalks that is slightly up, especially in the Chicagoland area, not just Cook County, but also in the other counties too, because sometimes they might be up and it's not flat down. So seniors and people with mobility, making sure that it's flat down and so that they can walk safely and won't be able to trip and end up in hospital. So I want y'all to make sure, get the percentage of it and the data of it, so how y'all can work that out and making sure that everybody is finally well secured. And they said it's about time. So that's my suggestions on it. So
Thank
that's
you.
all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments.
You're
Is there anyone-
welcome.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online? No? Okay, so that closes our public comment. Back on to item 5, next meeting scheduled for June 12th. And then can I get a motion to adjourn? Moved. Can I get a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion carries. Thank you for coming today.